He pulled over on a dusty road outside Belridge, expecting no more than a flat tire and silence. Instead, a woman appeared, oil on her hands, a quiet steadiness in her eyes, and offered help like she'd done this 100 times before. But when he glanced down and saw the sapphire ring on her finger, something in him shifted. His hand froze, his breath caught. Why did that ring look like it belonged to him? If you've ever felt that a simple moment can uncover something buried deep, stay with us. Like, subscribe, or leave a thought. Some stories deserve to be heard, not hurried. The Arizona sun was a quiet kind of punishment. It didn't rage or roar, it pressed, steady and unflinching, on skin, glass, metal, and patience. Logan Fairchild stood beside his Bentley on the shoulder of Interstate 87, shirt clinging to his back, collar damp with sweat, hands curled uselessly at his sides. The car had died 20 minutes ago, maybe more. His signal was gone. His driver was gone, sent home early so he could clear his head. Now he was alone, with heat radiating off the highway like judgment and nothing but open desert stretching both ways. He stared at the open hood. He knew engines, or rather, he knew what they were supposed to do. He knew torque and horsepower, carbon fiber, and the glossy specs dealerships like to throw around. But this engine, this dead machine, didn't care about his net worth or last quarter's earnings. It had shut down like a door closing, and no amount of money was going to open it. Another car passed, then another. No one stopped. Why would they? He looked like someone who didn't need help. The low groan of a slowing truck cut through the still air. It pulled up behind him, dust kicking off its tires. A woman stepped out. She was slim but grounded, like her weight came from purpose, not size. She wore a faded blue work shirt, sleeves rolled, dark jeans, and heavy boots coated in desert dust. Her skin glistened, not from makeup, but from work. Her hair was tied high in a wrap, and she moved with the kind of confidence that didn't need explanation. She didn't ask what was wrong, didn't offer a hello, just walked straight to the Bentley, gave it one slow, assessing look, then popped open the trunk of her own truck. She pulled out a heavy red toolbox and approached the hood like she'd been summoned. "You know what you're doing?" Logan asked, surprised at the tightness in his own voice. "Yeah," she said, not looking up. "Grew up on engines older than this. Yours just wants someone to listen." Her voice was low, steady, the kind of voice people trusted without thinking. She leaned in, tapped the battery housing, shifted the fan belt, checked connections with a flick of her wrist. Everything she did was precise, practiced. Logan didn't move. For a moment, it was like watching a conductor bring a machine back to life, one silent note at a time. "Not many people stop to help anymore," he said after a long pause. "Not many people drive Bentleys out here," she replied, half smiling. "Seemed like you needed a hand." He caught something in her tone, dry, not mocking, just honest, like she was speaking a language he hadn't used in years. Not boardroom English, just human. When the engine finally sputtered, then caught, humming like it was meant to, she stepped back and closed the hood. Logan reached for his wallet automatically. "Let me give you something," he said. "It's only fair." She waved him off. "It's just a car. You're fine now." "No, really. At least take." But then he saw it. Her hand moved as she tucked a rag into her pocket, and the sun caught the ring, oval cut, sapphire, set in a silver band, dulled with age but unmistakable. He felt his breath lock in his throat. That ring, 2 decades ago. He'd stood in a crowded gym during a photo op charity event. Just a kid in a blazer too big for him, told to smile and hand out trinkets. He hadn't wanted to be there, but then there'd been a girl 8, maybe 9, with hair in braids and a stubborn glint in her eye, sitting alone on the bleachers. He'd slipped her that ring, his mother's, a childish rebellion, and said, without really knowing why, "I'll come back for you." And then life moved on. Private schools, Harvard, boardrooms, deadlines. He'd never returned. He'd told himself it didn't matter. Now, here she was, standing in front of him, a woman now. But the shape of her face, the tilt of her chin, it was her. He took a step forward. "Maya." She froze, just for a beat, then turned halfway, looked at him, no recognition, no warmth, just a stillness, like the name meant something she'd buried long ago. He opened his mouth again, but she was already turning back to her truck. "Maya," he said again, softer. She paused, her hand on the door. The ring was still there, visible against the steering wheel. She didn't ask how he remembered. She didn't ask why he'd never come back. She just climbed in, started the engine, and pulled away, the dust trailing behind her like a curtain. He stood there a long time after she was gone, the desert wind brushing at his sleeves, the engine behind him quietly ticking. He wasn't sure why it mattered so much, but it did. He didn't know where she was going. He only knew one thing. He wasn't ready to let her vanish again. The Fairchild Tower loomed over downtown Phoenix like it had always belonged there. Glass, steel, and power wrapped in silence. On the 41st floor, Logan stood alone in his office. Lights off, blinds drawn, tie loosened at the neck. The room behind him hummed with muted city sounds, but inside, there was only stillness. He had returned hours ago, but he hadn't spoken to anyone. Not his assistant, not his board, not even Elise. He had come back to look at a box he hadn't touched in years. It sat in the far corner of a cabinet behind the bookshelf, marked CSR Archives. Inside were old photos, public relations snapshots, smiling faces, kids with handmade signs that read, "Thank you, Fairchild," in uneven crayon. One photo, folded at the edge, stopped him cold. A girl, maybe 8 or 9, braids tied tight, chin tilted with stubborn pride, on her finger his mother's sapphire ring. He didn't remember her name. He had never asked. It had been a short, strange moment. He was 15. His father had dragged him to some summer outreach program in Belridge. While photographers clicked, Logan had slipped the ring onto the girl's hand like it was a game. "Keep it," he'd said. "I'll come back." He never did. Now she had returned on a desert road, under the sun, holding that same ring like a relic that had survived something he never even noticed breaking. Across town, in a small garage off South Belridge, Maya pulled off her gloves and wiped the grease from her fingers. The shop had no sign out front, just a faded mural of a phoenix peeling off the stucco. Inside, tools hung in careful order, and a battered radio whispered old country songs. She opened the door to the back room and stepped into a narrow space that doubled as her living room and her son's study corner. Josiah looked up from a workbook. "Truck okay today?" "Mama." She nodded and smiled. A small curl of the mouth ran a little hot, but she's steady now. He returned to his math. Maya stood still, eyes resting on his curls, the way his brow furrowed when he tried to carry the one. Then she sat beside him and adjusted the lamp. The ring caught the light. She hadn't taken it off in 20 years. It had become a habit, almost muscle memory. But that day, the weight of it returned. The way Logan Fairchild's gaze locked onto it, the way he spoke her name without asking it, it brought something back that she had packed away. Grace used to say, "Memories aren't doors you open. They're floodgates you survive." That night, after Josiah fell asleep on the couch, Maya sat at the kitchen table, bills spread out like a hand of bad cards, the ring still on her hand. She rotated it slowly with her thumb. It didn't sparkle like it used to. The stone was cloudy, the band scratched, but it was still whole. Her phone buzzed, a number with no name. She hesitated before tapping it open. The message was simple. "Are you free to meet tomorrow? LF." She read it twice, then once more. She didn't answer right away. She didn't even decide. She just sat there, the glow of the phone screen resting on her face, and the soft breath of her son rising and falling from the couch behind her. And for the first time in years, she didn't know whether to hold the past tighter or finally let it speak. Logan arrived 10 minutes early. The cafe Maya had chosen sat off an aging street in Chandler, tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. No valet, no sleek glass walls, no curated playlists. Just mismatched tables, the hiss of an old espresso machine, and a hand-painted sign on the window that read, "Coffee, not opinions." He stood out the moment he walked in. Gray slacks, crisp shirt, leather watch that cost more than most used cars in the neighborhood. A few heads turned. He offered a nod, unsure what else to give. Maya was already seated in a corner booth. No makeup, no earrings. Her hair was pinned back, simple and unfussed. She wore a faded button-up shirt and jeans, the kind with creases earned from labor, not design. Her posture was straight, but not stiff. She didn't look around. She didn't need to. She owned her space without asking permission. He approached slowly. "Hey," he said, unsure if the word was too casual or not enough. She didn't stand, just gestured to the seat across from her. They sat in silence for a beat. The air smelled like cinnamon and burnt beans. A ceiling fan creaked overhead. "I didn't expect you to respond," Logan said. "I didn't plan to," she replied. The waitress came. Maya ordered black coffee. Logan asked for a latte. The difference felt louder than it should have. "I saw the ring," he said, after the drinks arrived. His hand hovered over his cup, unsure what to do with it. "I figured," she answered, calm. I didn't know you'd still have it." Maya leaned back. "I don't keep it for you. I keep it because it reminds me not to wait on promises that don't come back." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't accuse. It just stated the truth the way a ledger records loss. Logan swallowed. "I didn't mean to. I don't need an apology," she cut in, not unkindly. "I needed to know I wasn't crazy for remembering." A couple at the next table laughed too loudly. Logan glanced their way, then back to her. He noticed the thin calluses on her fingers, the faint smudge of oil near her wrist. Real life etched into skin. "You have a son," he said, quieter now. She nodded. "Josiah. He's 8, smarter than me, more stubborn than my mother. Wants to build rockets. And his father is not the reason we're here." He nodded. "Fair enough. This wasn't a biography. This was a reckoning. I looked you up," he admitted, "last night. Found nothing." She smiled for the first time, not warmly, but wryly. "Some of us don't leave digital trails, not because we're hiding, because no one ever thought we were worth following." He sat with that. Maya finished her coffee. Logan hadn't touched his. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She tilted her head. "What's your last name?" She hesitated, not because she didn't know it, but because saying it out loud, in front of him, felt like setting down a card neither of them could take back. "Ellison," she said at last. The name hit him like a soft thud to the chest. It wasn't unfamiliar. It was rooted in files he'd read long ago. Land contracts, disputes, a name his father had said with irritation, not guilt. His face shifted. "You know it," Maya said. "Not a question. I've seen it. In documents. Years ago. My father." She held up her hand. "Don't explain yet. Not until you're sure you want to know what I might say back." He didn't answer. They stood. He reached for the check, but she'd already paid. "You didn't have to," he started. "I know," she said, "but I wanted the control. Just for today." They walked outside together. The sun had softened, but the street still steamed lightly. She turned toward the lot. He called after her, "Maya." She paused. "I didn't forget you," he said. "I just didn't know how to remember." She didn't look back, but he saw the way her shoulders shifted. Logan didn't sleep. He sat by the window of his condo in North Phoenix, lights off, tie loose, city noise bleeding in from 23 stories below. Somewhere across the street, a garbage truck rattled through an alley. Somewhere else, laughter spilled from a rooftop bar. But in his mind, there was only silence and one name, Ellison. It wasn't just a name. It was a corner of his father's legacy he was never supposed to touch. He remembered it vaguely from years ago. Belridge, 2004. A land dispute, water rights. Some woman who wouldn't sign. Grace Ellison. There had been legal murmurs, press whispers, boardroom irritation. His father had once called it a necessary cleanup before we go big. Back then, Logan hadn't asked questions. He was still in grad school, still watching Richard Fairchild control empires with the flick of a pen. But now, that name had come back. Not as a rumor or a footnote, but as Maya. The girl with the ring. The woman in grease-stained denim. The mother who had rebuilt her life in the same town his family had tried to erase. By sunrise, he was already at the office. Fairchild HQ was empty at that hour, just the hum of elevators and the quiet rhythm of janitors finishing their night shift. Logan walked past reception, past the executive suite, and straight into archives. He hadn't been down there in years. The room smelled of old carpet and toner ink. He flipped through boxes labeled by Project F-113, B Ridge Lot A, Legal Final 2005. There, in a faded red folder, he found what he was looking for. Ellison Holdings, Land Acquisition Proposal. The first page was clean purchase terms, proposed compensation, Fairchild Group letterhead, but on the third page, things changed. A stamped note. Subject deemed unstable by court-advised psychiatrist, authorization of family guardian requested. Attached was a signature sloppy, mismatched letters and a file from Cedar Ridge Psychiatric Center, date November 17th, 2004. Diagnosis, paranoid delusions, status admitted for observation. There was no legal challenge, no appeal. Just a sealed contract signed days later, transferring the property to a subsidiary under a different name. Logan stared at the file for a long time. He didn't know Grace Ellison, but Maya's face the day before, the edge in her voice, the way she guarded her past like something always trying to be stolen, suddenly made sense. He called legal. The response was fast, clipped. Sir, those records were sealed internally under Directive R5 issued by Mr. Richard Fairchild in 2012. We don't have access anymore. Even compliance needs clearance. Logan didn't argue. He thanked the voice and hung up. For the next hour, he sat at his desk, staring at the skyline. If Maya found out who he was, not just the boy who gave her a ring, but the son of the man who took everything from her family, what would she see when she looked at him? Not Logan. Not the man sipping bitter coffee across from her. Just another Fairchild. He looked down at his hands. They were shaking. Later that afternoon, he opened his laptop and typed 2 names into a blank document, Grace Ellison and Cedar Ridge. He didn't know yet what he was trying to uncover, but he knew something had been buried too neatly. That night, as he stared at the lights below, he didn't ask himself if he could tell Maya. He asked if he deserved to. The sun dipped lower when Logan turned off Belridge Parkway and eased his car into the narrow gravel lot behind the old garage. The building stood hunched beneath a crooked sign that once read, Ellison Repairs, though most of the paint had long peeled away. Rust lined the edges of the roof, and a tire swing hung still from a bent tree limb nearby. It wasn't the kind of place he was used to entering, not in a suit, not with his name, but he wasn't here as Fairchild. Inside, the clang of metal on concrete echoed softly. A boy crouched on the floor, coaxing the guts of a busted fan back together. His knees were streaked with dust, his brow furrowed in total focus. Behind him stood Maya, arms crossed, leaning silently against the doorway like she'd been watching long before Logan arrived. He held up the toolbox. I figured he might like this. Got a couple of proper voltage testers in there, and a hand drill that doesn't sound like a dying bee. She didn't smile, didn't soften, but she walked forward and took it from him, opening the latches with practiced fingers. Her eyes scanned every piece. These are real tools, she said. I figured you both deserve something that doesn't break after a week. The boy looked up, curious. Who are you? Logan bent slightly. Just someone who needed help, and got it. The boy nodded, accepting that as enough. He held up the fan's cover. It rattles when it spins. Mama said it's 'cause the blades are warped. She's probably right, Logan said, his voice quiet. Try balancing them with a washer on the light side. Maya watched them, arms no longer crossed, still wary, but less like a closed gate, more like someone deciding whether to open it an inch. They worked side by side for a while, Logan, Maya, and the boy refitting the motor casing, adjusting the blades, testing a slow turn with the new drill. It wasn't comfortable, not yet. But it was something like neutral ground. Logan didn't overstep. He didn't talk too much, just followed Maya's lead. Later, as they wiped their hands and put away the tools, she poured 2 glasses of water, handed him one, and sat down on an overturned crate. My mother, she began, not looking at him, wasn't crazy. They said she was, but she wasn't. She owned a piece of land near the aquifer line. When Fairchild made an offer, she refused. She didn't trust men in suits. She'd been tricked once before, so she stood her ground. Logan didn't speak. One morning, she went missing. A week later, they said she'd been institutionalized for delusional behavior. The land was transferred within the month. No hearings, no appeals, and no one in town wanted to talk about it. He stared at the concrete floor. His heart thudded low in his chest. She raised me to believe the world had rules, but some people get to bend them. I grew up thinking she'd made a mistake. Now, her voice trailed off. Now she had reason to doubt everything. Maya, he said softly, I never knew. I swear to you. I don't want you to swear anything. She cut in. Calm. Not yet. He nodded. He didn't deserve her trust. Not with his last name. He stood to go, brushing his hands on his pants. The boy had disappeared to the back, humming to himself. At the door, she called out. Logan. He turned. The late light cut across her face, and for a moment, she looked so much like the girl from the photo he couldn't breathe. Have you ever heard of someone named Grace? She asked, voice quiet. He held her gaze. Something inside him twisted. He shook his head slowly, carefully. Not a lie, not entirely true. She didn't press. He stepped outside as the sky turned to gold, unsure if he'd made a beginning or reopened something that had never healed. The night air in South Belridge held a quiet heaviness, the kind that settled over rooftops and curled beneath garage doors like a memory too old to name. Logan parked behind the garage, headlights off, engine cut before it rolled to a stop. This time, he hadn't worn a tie. He didn't come as a CEO. He came because something in him no longer let him stay away, inside. The soft hum of a desk fan mingled with the sound of paper, shuffling. Maya sat on the floor of the back room, legs crossed beneath her, a bundle of rolled-up blueprints spread around her like discarded thoughts. She wore a gray tank, hair tied up, grease smudged faintly across her forearm. In the dim light, she didn't look surprised when he stepped in. I didn't think you'd come back, she said without looking up. I told you I owed you more than a thank you, Logan replied. He stepped over an open box and knelt beside her. The table had been cleared off, every inch covered in old folders, clipped receipts, and hand-drawn layouts. On one sheet, a detailed sketch of irrigation lines mapped against Belridge's natural dips and ridges. On another, a rough plan titled in black ink Ellison Wells, Sustainable Water for the Belridge Basin. Maya handed it to him. Her voice was softer now. My mom was working on this before everything fell apart. Said the aquifer could have supported every farm west of Chandler if the city let her finish. He nodded, absorbing the lines, the handwriting, the vision that had been dismissed as delusion. He reached for a dusty file cabinet pushed into the corner, the drawer stuck. He yanked one open, a puff of air rising from the paper inside. Together they sorted. Maya moved with muscle memory, pulling names, dates, permits she thought had been lost. Logan followed her lead, filing, unfolding, holding back questions. Then, it fell. From between 2 manila folders, a sealed envelope slipped loose, yellowed at the edges but still intact. It wasn't addressed, just sealed and heavy. Maya stared at it like it was breathing. She opened it carefully. Inside was a folded page, worn but legible, her mother's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't come back. Not because I didn't want to, but because they wouldn't let me. They said I was unstable. They said I was paranoid. But truth doesn't need sanity to exist. It only needs someone to listen. Don't let them bury what matters. Find the map, find the water, and tell our side. Maya didn't cry, but she pressed the letter to her chest, as if it might vanish. Logan stood frozen beside her. He had no words, no defense, no explanation that would matter, but what she needed wasn't words. He pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. Then he bent beside her, tilting the light gently toward the map she unfolded. It was hand-drawn, but precise. Elevation marks, notes on soil content, a path toward what had once been dismissed as fantasy. Logan stared, and for the first time, he didn't see a project. He saw a blueprint for what should have been, and what still might be. Maya looked at him, voice low. They took everything. They made her disappear. He didn't look away. Then let's start by finding where she went. She blinked. I mean it. He said, Cedar Ridge. I'll find a way in. She searched his face, not for answers, but for hesitation. She found none. She didn't say thank you. But she placed the letter back into the envelope like it was something sacred. Then she turned to the map again, one hand bracing its edge, the other resting over her mother's name. He adjusted the light, his breath shallow. And together, in that quiet garage where no one was watching, they leaned closer, not just to the drawing, but to something that had always been waiting to surface. The light in Logan's office was cooler than usual, half-tinted by the glass walls, dimmed just enough to keep the Phoenix sun from pouring in. The skyline outside shimmered, indifferent to the weight inside the room. Logan stood at the far end, arms folded, staring out like he might find answers in the blur of traffic far below. Elise Langley entered without knocking. She never knocked. A tailored navy suit hugged her frame, papers in one hand, tablet in the other. She didn't speak right away. Just placed the folder on his desk, tapped it once. That's the final agenda for the city fundraiser, she said. You're listed for the 6:30 remarks. Logan didn't turn around. I won't be there. There was a pause. Elise walked to the table, laid the tablet down with more force than needed. You've missed 3 board preps and the water project walkthrough. Now this, I've got other matters. She looked at him. The way only someone who's known you long enough to be tired can, other matters. You mean her? He said nothing. Elise stepped closer, voice lowering. You're chasing a ghost. Logan, one woman's pain won't undo 20 years of Fairchild's growth, and it sure won't change what your father did. He turned, finally. His face was unreadable. Maybe not, but it might change what I do. She blinked, not surprised, just measuring what this meant. She picked up the tablet, shut the folder quietly. If you step through this, she said softly, you don't get to come back the same. He didn't answer. She left without slamming the door. Meanwhile, miles south. Maya rinsed grease from her arms at the utility sink behind the garage. The water sputtered from the old pipe, cold and rusty. She scrubbed harder than needed. Behind her, the soft clink of teacups. Mrs. Ruth sat on the porch, pink rollers in her hair, one slipper missing, sipping chamomile like it held state secrets. So, the older woman began, he came back. Maya didn't respond. Ruth continued. You've got that look again, the same one you had when the city pulled the permit for your mom's, well, tight mouth. Eyes too still. Maya dried her hands, stepped onto the porch. He's not like them. No one ever is until they are. Maya looked at the sky, clouds gathering low near the horizon. He asked if I wanted to go with him, to Cedar Ridge. Ruth put her teacup down, and I said nothing, but I thought, if I go, I might come back different, and I don't know if I'm ready for that. Ruth leaned in. Honey, sometimes we don't go to find the truth. We go to find what it's turned us into. That night, Maya heard the knock. Not loud, just firm. She opened the door slowly. Logan stood in the soft spill of porch light. He looked worn but steady. In his hand, a small white card. He offered it wordlessly. She took it. On the front, Cedar Ridge visitor authorization, Logan Fairchild. He said simply, "Your name's on the back. I had to pull a favor, but it'll hold." She looked at him, at the suit he wasn't wearing, at the tired beneath his eyes, at the steadiness in his voice. "You sure you want to go through with this?" She asked. "I'm already through," he said, "but you don't have to be alone if you don't want to." She hesitated, then quietly, "You understand? If I go in there, I'm not walking back out light." "I know," he replied, and this time, he didn't look away. The driveway up to Cedar Ridge curved gently through a line of tamarisk trees, their branches casting striped shadows on the concrete as the afternoon sun leaned west. From the outside, the facility looked more like a private retreat than a mental institution, clean, sterile, manicured to the edge of perfection. But Maya felt a weight in her chest with every step closer, like something in the ground remembered her mother's name. Logan walked beside her in silence, dressed down for once, no suit, no watch, just jeans and a faded Oxford shirt. He held out the visitor card as they reached the front desk. "Appointment for Grace Ellison. I'm listed as support." The receptionist scanned it, nodded. "She's in the community room, window side." They were led down a long corridor with pale green walls and floors too shiny to feel right. Every few feet, a muted painting of mountains or birds tried to soften what couldn't be softened. Maya walked stiffly. She hadn't spoken since they left South Belridge. Her arms stayed crossed tight, her mouth drawn. Logan kept pace, but he didn't try to speak. The door to the community room opened with a soft hiss. There, in a corner by the window, sat a woman in a peach cardigan, her hair thin and white, pulled into a loose braid. She sat hunched, her hands resting in her lap, palms open like they'd been waiting too long to hold anything. Maya didn't breathe. "Mom." The woman turned slowly. It was a fragile turn, but when her face lifted, Maya's knees nearly gave out. It was her, older, faded, but unmistakable. Grace Ellison blinked twice, then leaned forward slightly, as if searching Maya's face for proof of her own memory. She didn't speak right away. Then, a tremor in her hand. Her fingers rose shakily, reaching toward Maya, not like someone remembering, but like someone recognizing. "I thought they told me you wouldn't come," Grace whispered, voice dry, but not broken. Maya stepped forward, knelt beside her mother, and touched the woman's wrist gently. They were wrong. Grace smiled faintly. It was small, but it cracked something open. Then her gaze shifted past Maya, her brow furrowed. She pointed slowly. Fairchild Logan froze. Maya turned, her face tightening, while Grace's voice grew clearer. "Fairchild, you look like Richard. The same eyes. He used to come here. Tell me I was confused, that I imagined the maps, the well, everything." Logan stepped back. "No," he said. "I'm not him. He stopped. Then, lower, "I'm his son." The silence that followed was too thick to breathe. Maya's body went still. She stared at him, stunned, then her face drained of expression. Slowly, she rose, placing her hand on Grace's shoulder, then walked past Logan without a word. He followed her into the corridor. "Maya." "You knew," she said, not turning. "I didn't. Not when I met you. Not at first. And now I know everything, and I wish I didn't." She stopped, looked at him. "Do you—" "Yes." She took out the visitor card, held it between two fingers. "Then I guess you know why I can't trust you." He didn't answer. She pushed open the exit door, walked out into the heat, and headed straight to the car. At the vehicle, her hand trembled trying to unlock the door. The key missed the slot twice. She wiped at her eyes with the heel of her palm, then tried again. Behind her. Logan didn't move. He stood under the shade of the building, watching her like someone who just realized the damage he didn't even mean to cause. She didn't look back, but he knew. Something had broken, maybe for good. The gravel crunched under Maya's tires as she turned off the main road and into the stretch of forgotten land that used to be a park. The old Belridge Commons, it hadn't been called that in years. Now it was just dirt, a few surviving trees, and a bench that leaned slightly to the left. She parked, cut the engine, and sat still for a long moment. The sun dipped low behind the ridge, casting long shadows that reached toward her like memories that never died. She stepped out, walked across the cracked path, and sat on the bench where she used to swing her feet as a little girl. It was the same bench her mother brought her to when Grace still had ink on her fingers from sketching blueprints and fire in her voice when talking about clean water for everyone in Belridge. Now Maya sat with her head bowed, fists clenched in her lap. She hated herself for letting Logan get close, hated how she'd let her guard down, even for a second, even for a smile. And worst of all, she hated the way her voice cracked when she said the word mom with him standing behind her. It made it all feel wrong, contaminated, in Phoenix. Logan sat alone in a dim conference room on the 40th floor of Fairchild Group headquarters. The windows reflected nothing but dark. On the screen before him, a scan of the Belridge case file from 2004 blinked slowly. Highlighted in digital red, Grace Ellison, mentally unfit for property negotiations. He didn't blink. His jaw worked as if chewing back rage. Then he slammed his fist into the table, across the glass wall. Elise Langley watched for a moment before stepping inside. She carried a folder thick, worn, tied with a red string. Her voice was steady. "You asked about the Belridge project. This is the full copy of the contract your father signed." Logan opened it. Grace Ellison's signature looked perfect, but something was off. He flipped to the medical appendix. A doctor's note declared her unstable, unfit to manage property affairs. The signature below was from a Dr. Charles Whitman. "Whitman's dead," Elise added. "Passed away in 2006. No way to verify this now." Logan stared at the page. "That signature," he muttered. "It's not hers." Elise didn't respond. She watched him, then quietly asked, "Did you know?" He shook his head. "No, but I should have looked sooner, down in Belridge." Maya stood in the doorway of her home, her keys trembling slightly in her hand. Inside, the living room light was still on. She walked in, dropped her bag, and called out softly, "Marcus." No answer. But on the kitchen table, a piece of wide-ruled paper sat folded in half, her son's handwriting, in thick marker. "Mom, today we learned what justice means. It means not giving up." Maya stared at the words for a long time. She picked up the note, held it close to her chest, and closed her eyes. Outside, the wind kicked up a layer of dust, blowing it across the front steps and the road beyond. In that small moment, she realized something painful. Her anger didn't change the truth, and neither did love. She turned off the light and stood in the dark for a while, paper still in hand. Some names you inherit, some names you survive, and some, like Ellison, you carry because you're the only one left who still believes what they stood for. The sun had dipped low behind the ridge, casting long, golden streaks over the worn-out houses of South Belridge. The town moved slow, like it always had, slow to change, slow to trust. But something had shifted. It started with a noise metal grinding, pipes clanging in a part of town most folks had given up on, down near 8th and Clement, where the water lines had burst 2 summers ago and never been fixed. A small crew of young men and women were unrolling new pipes from a truck that didn't belong to any city department. Raphael, the oldest among them, scratched his head. They just showed up. He told Mrs. Ruth from across the street, said the equipment was donated. Ruth squinted at the truck, then crossed her arms. Donated by who nobody knew. But by mid-morning, word had spread the community center on Rivera was getting new computers. The busted front porch was being replaced, the leaky roof already patched. Maya heard the rumors as she returned from the grocery store. She didn't say anything, just drove to Rivera, parked, and walked in with her arms folded tight across her chest. Inside, the air still smelled like old wood and pencil shavings. On the community bulletin board, where they usually tacked up math club flyers and missing pet notices, was a crisp white sheet of paper, handwritten, neat block letters, donation received courtesy of L. E., not L. F. Ellison. Maya stood still. She felt her chest tighten, not in anger, but something more complicated. He'd signed with her name, not his father's, not the name that had torn this town apart. When she got home, the sun had already dropped behind the rooftops. The porch creaked under her steps, and there it was, a manila envelope, rubber-banded, sitting squarely on her welcome mat. No note, no knock, just left there, quiet and waiting. She took it inside, sat at the table, and opened it slowly. Inside hospital records from 2005, Grace Ellison's intake form at Cedar Ridge. The admission flagged non-consensual, with annotations from a physician already under investigation by then. Next, property transfer forms from Fairchild Holdings documents signed weeks after Grace was institutionalized, with witness names that no longer existed in any directory. And tucked between those papers, folded with care, yellowed at the creases, was a letter addressed to Maya, if ever found. It was her mother's handwriting. I fought as long as I could. The letter read, "But they made me disappear because I wouldn't sell what wasn't just land, it was promise. If you're reading this, someone found it for you. Someone believes the fight wasn't foolish." Maya sat motionless. Her eyes traced every word, every curl of ink, like it could mend something inside her that had bent too long without breaking. Then she saw one more slip of paper, a single line in Logan's handwriting. "I don't ask for forgiveness, but your mother deserves to be heard." That night, the phone rang. It was Cedar Ridge. Grace's voice was firmer than before, clearer, grounded. "There was a man," she said, quiet but steady. "He didn't say sorry. He just placed a photo of a girl on my table. The girl was holding a wrench, wearing a ring. He said nothing. He just cried." Maya didn't speak right away. Her hand went to the edge of the table, gripping it like it might float away. In the stillness, she felt something shift, not everything, not enough to forget, but enough to begin. The sun sat low over Bell Ridge, its light stretching long and faint across the roofs, like it was trying to touch something it hadn't in years. Logan stood across the street from Maya's workshop, not moving. His shirt clung to his back, collar wrinkled from hours in a car he didn't remember driving. In his hand was nothing. No folder, no words rehearsed, just weight somewhere between his ribs and his throat. Maya saw him before he knocked. She opened the door anyway. "I read everything," she said, leaning slightly against the frame. Her voice was steady, but not cold. "Thank you for not trying to explain it." Logan gave a slow nod. "You know who I am," he said quietly, "but I'm not sure I do." She stepped aside without a word. He followed. Inside, the space smelled of grease and old pine wood, the kind of scent that clings to someone's life, not just their tools. A fan spun slowly in the corner, clicking every third turn. They sat down at the small table Maya used for eating. Paperwork, fixing wires, whatever the day asked of her. Logan looked at his hands, then at her, then back down. "I was born in a group home outside Flagstaff," he began. "Didn't know my mother. Wasn't meant to stay long, but nobody came. Not until Richard Fairchild did. He didn't adopt me to be a son. He adopted me to be something molded, polished, useful." He let out a breath, like it hurt to form each piece of memory. "I was 6. He told me my name didn't matter anymore. That Fairchild was a gift. Said the world would treat me like I belonged, if I wore it well enough. He made sure I wore it perfectly." Maya didn't interrupt. "I thought I was chosen," Logan added, voice cracking for a breath. "Turns out, I was picked up. From convenience. maybe guilt. The silence stretched. Then, gently, Maya reached across the table. Her hand didn't touch his, but it landed close, enough that he saw it. "I haven't forgiven you," she said. "Not yet." Logan met her eyes. There was no plea in his face, just listening. "But I'm tired of hating you." He lowered his gaze again, then nodded once. It wasn't peace, but it was something better than war. They sat like that, neither speaking, until the fan clicked again and again. Logan finally asked, "If there were a way to bring your mother's story forward to make sure what happened to her doesn't stay buried, would you be willing?" Maya didn't flinch. She looked down at the table. Her fingers closed slightly. Then she looked up. "Not just for her," she said. "For everyone they tried to silence like her." Outside, the light had shifted, not brighter, but more honest. The city center auditorium in Phoenix had never been this packed on a weekday. Outside, banners read, "Bell Ridge Horizon, a new future." Inside, the air smelled faintly of fresh paint, coffee, and perfume too expensive for anyone from Belridge. Rows of pressed suits filled the seats. At the front, the podium gleamed, lit from every angle. Behind it, the large screen waited for its cue. Logan sat in the back row, hands clasped tight. He wasn't listed on the program. He didn't need to be. Maya stepped onto the stage in silence. No one announced her. She wore no designer name, just a simple blue blouse, sleeves rolled, her hair tied back, no jewelry, only a silver ring, her mother's. The room didn't know whether to clap. She walked to the microphone. Behind her, the screen lit up, but not with the company's promotional reel, not with the glowing animations Elise had signed off on. It was an old blueprint, water lines, soil layers. In the corner, Ellison Wells Project, 2004. Gasps rose, phones tilted to record. A photo followed, black and white. A woman, eyes fierce but tired, standing beside a sign, "Water is not for sale." Maya looked out at the crowd. Her voice, when it came, was calm. "I don't represent Fairchild Group. I don't represent any brand or boardroom. I stand here as the daughter of Grace Ellison." A murmur ran through the crowd like wind through dry grass. Some turned, some leaned forward. No one stood. She was a landowner, a mother, a civil engineer, and she was institutionalized for refusing to sign a paper. Another beat. She didn't waver. They said she was unstable, that she couldn't make decisions. But she did. She chose not to give up a well that served a community for free. She chose not to bow. In the front row, Elise rose. She walked toward the stage, heels sharp against the floor. She held out a small USB drive. Maya took it without hesitation. "She left me her work, and a few letters," Maya said. Then she paused. "But someone else left this." She plugged the drive into the port. The projector flickered, then sound filled the room. It was Richard Fairchild's voice. "Take her out of the picture. We don't need a lunatic messing with the game board." Silence. Not a silence that waits, one that judges. No faces moved, eyes darted. A few mouths opened and closed again. Maya didn't smile, didn't look for approval. "The truth doesn't need forgiveness," she said simply. "It just needs to be heard." She stepped away from the podium. Elise stayed at the side of the stage. Logan hadn't moved. He was still sitting, elbows on his knees, staring straight ahead. But his chest moved differently now. Slower, like something had broken quietly, and rightfully. Maya didn't look back, but as she walked past the front row, she nodded once, toward no one in particular. And then she left the stage. The hallway of Elise's home echoed with nothing but the soft thud of papers being packed into a box. The blinds were half drawn. Outside, the city buzzed with aftershock from the Bell Ridge revelation. Inside, it was as quiet as a courtroom seconds before a verdict. Logan stood at the edge of the room, still in the same suit he wore that morning, still carrying the weight of everything Maya had said. But this time, he hadn't come to talk about her, or not just her. Elise didn't turn when she heard the door. She didn't need to. "I assume you're here for the truth," she said, voice controlled, crisp. "I'm here because I owe you an answer," Logan replied, "and I can't pretend anymore." She turned then, face unreadable. She held out a folder, thin, heavy in ways that didn't show. "Read it," she said. "Then tell me again you didn't know." He opened it, lab letterhead, dates, patient identifiers. Then the words, parentage analysis, Grace Ellison, subject 02, confirmed biological match to subject 01, Logan Ellison. Fairchild. He stared at it like it was written in a language he had forgotten how to understand. Elise. What is this? Her voice cracked once, only once. Then it was stone again. She had twins, a boy and a girl, born 1990. One went missing from a clinic in Phoenix. Records were sealed. No one cared because she was already labeled unstable. Logan lowered the folder. His hands trembled slightly. And I was adopted. By Richard Fairchild. Adopted, Elise scoffed, then softened. Taken, picked, trained. You weren't adopted, Logan. You were absorbed. He couldn't find the air in the room. His memories scattered. Colorless came in flashes. A dark crib, a woman's humming, muffled by walls, a long corridor that smelled like bleach and something colder. Elise walked toward him, slowly. You were never part of them. Not really. That's why he never trusted you. Why you always felt like an outsider in your own name. He sat down without meaning to, hands dropping to his knees. I spent my life trying to live up to a man who knew I didn't belong. He whispered. Elise looked at him more tired than angry now. And Maya Logan looked up. She's my sister. A silence stretched between them, fragile as glass. Elise didn't say anything more. She didn't need to. She only stepped back, leaving him alone with the knowledge he had chased and avoided in equal measure. Logan left her place without saying goodbye. The night was colder than it should have been for Phoenix, across the state line in Belridge. Maya sat in her room, the lights off, just the soft glow of her laptop. She played the audio again, not for the confession, but for the end. The moment after Richard's voice faded, and something else came through, a child's cry, faint, raw, unmistakable. She paused the track, pressed replay, focused. Not her, not a recording glitch. It was there, and it was real. The boardroom looked exactly the same. Polished walnut table, leather chairs arranged in a cold horseshoe, but the faces sitting around it weren't the same. Some looked tight-lipped, some avoided eye contact. One or two glanced at Logan like they were still trying to place who he really was now that the press had done it for them. Across the table, the chairman cleared his throat. "This is highly irregular," he said, voice sharp as the lapel pin on his jacket. "We're in the middle of an external audit. We need stability." Logan stood without raising his voice. No entourage, no title behind him now, just his own name, or whatever was left of it. "You'll have it," he said, "because I'm resigning, effective immediately." There was a collective stiffening, the kind you only hear in powerful rooms, chairs creaking, breath caught. "You don't have to do this." Another executive said, a woman this time, lips thin with something between disbelief and desperation. "The firm will survive, but not if you hand the narrative over to whom Logan cut in, to the truth, to people like Maya, whose lives were buried under paperwork and profit." The chairman leaned forward. "This name," he said, slow and deliberate, "has opened doors for you that others spend their whole lives trying to reach. You want to burn it down?" Logan shook his head. "It was never mine to carry." He placed a folder on the table, his formal letter of resignation, his full divestment from all shares, no negotiation, no payout. "Just release. I'm not destroying anything," he added. "I'm returning it to where it came from, with interest." He turned to leave, not in anger, not in triumph, just a man choosing the weight he wanted to live with. Across the city, Maya stood in the modest reception hall of Cedar Ridge, heart steady but tight, Her fingers clutched the court documents, new evaluations, legal release, clearance from the health board, all signed, all stamped. It had taken weeks, paper trails, affidavits, professional testimony from the same system that once called Grace Ellison unstable. Now, it called her competent. The double doors opened with a slow hum. Grace appeared, thinner than memory, hair silver but combed neatly. Her steps were cautious, but her eyes were clear. They didn't speak right away. Maya walked forward and held out her arms. Grace stopped, just looked at her daughter. Then, in one sudden motion, she embraced her, fierce trembling, as though the years apart could be folded up and filed away if they just held tight enough. Behind them, no reporters waited, no cameras, no news van. Just Ruth's old pickup waiting in the lot. Just a mother and daughter, standing under the soft Arizona sun, on land that had once been called worthless, until someone tried to take it by force. Grace touched Maya's face and whispered something only she could hear. And Maya smiled like she hadn't in years. The sun over Belridge that morning felt different. It didn't burn. It held steady, like it, too, had waited long enough. They called it the Grace Ellison Foundation. No brass signs, no ribbons, just hand-painted letters over a wooden arch, carved by kids from the local school. The building used to be the old post office. Now, it had classrooms, a community kitchen, and a reading room with wide windows that let the lights stay long into the afternoon. People came, not donors, not officials. People. Women who used to walk miles just to hear Grace teach night classes. Men who once sat in church pews beside her, too ashamed to speak when she was taken. Children she had once helped fill out college applications. Now grown, standing tall. There was no stage, just a crate turned sideways and a small microphone. When Logan stepped up, silence rippled through the crowd. He wasn't in a suit, no tie, no corporate pin, just a navy blue shirt and his real name finally spoken out loud, by him. Logan Ellison, he said into the mic, voice soft but steady. That's who I am. And I'm not here to be forgiven. I'm here because my life began again the day I learned her name. He paused, looked at Grace in the front row, hand wrapped in Maya's, then at Maya herself, eyes calm, no longer guarded. Then at the little boy beside her, swaying on his heels, something clutched in his hands. Logan continued, I used to think being chosen meant being lucky. But some of us weren't chosen. We were taken. We were hidden. And somehow, in the shadows, people like Grace still fought to keep something alive, hope, truth, dignity. I just want to belong to that. To her. To them. There was no applause at first, just a hush that held the weight of too many silences finally lifted. Then the boy broke free from Maya's hand, ran up the steps, and tugged at Logan's shirt. I drew this, he said, holding up a wrinkled page with 3 stick figures, one tall, one with curly hair, and one small in the middle, under a roof drawn in orange crayon. It's you and Mommy, and me. It's our house. Logan's hand shook as he took the picture, and then the applause came. Not loud, but deep. Real. By late afternoon, as the crowd began to thin, 2 black SUVs rolled up silently outside a home in Scottsdale. Inside, Richard Fairchild sat alone, bourbon untouched. When the agents read out the charges, unlawful confinement, falsifying medical records, federal land fraud, he didn't argue. He didn't speak. He only asked for his coat. Back in Belridge, Ruth sat on a wooden bench with Maya, sipping from a chipped mug. You know, she said, voice husky from age and dust. Truth's a stubborn thing. People think they can bury it, but truth's got roots. And today, child, they broke through the ground. Maya didn't respond. She was watching Logan, now kneeling in the garden beside her son, showing him how to press seeds into damp soil. He turned for a moment, caught her gaze, and for the first time, she didn't look away. It wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. The old warehouse on Belridge's south edge had been rebuilt with plywood and grit, The roof still creaked when wind rolled through, and the walls still wore stories of rain. But now, the air smelled of sawdust and hot metal, of oil and possibility. Maya stepped out onto the lot in her grease-stained apron, wiping her hands on a rag, calling out to the kids clustered around the rusted pickup. Brakes over back to the axle. They groaned, but only for show. She smiled without showing teeth, the way people do when they've carried weight too long to ever fully set it down. But today, it felt lighter. Across the yard, Logan crouched beside a girl no older than 10, helping her steady a wood-burning pen. They were working on nameplates' rough edges, shaky letters. One of them read, "Home." He didn't wear a title anymore, not CEO, not director, not son of anyone. Just Logan, the man who stayed, the man who built, not bought. They never used words like husband or partner. That wasn't the language they needed. When people asked, they just said, "We co-founded this place." And somehow, that said more. Most of the kids came with records too thin or too thick. Some had run away more times than they could count. Others didn't even know the year they were born. But here, they were students, makers, healers of small machines and bruised hearts. One boy, small and missing 2 front teeth, came running with greasy hands, holding a crooked metal piece. "Mr. Logan, it fits. I made it fit." Logan looked up, eyes squinting in the sun. "Let me see." He examined the piece, nodded like a craftsman. "You didn't just make it fit, you made it work." The boy beamed, ran off like he had built a rocket. Maya watched from the doorway. Her gaze didn't soften, but her fingers reached up, touching the sapphire ring still snug on her hand. It caught a glint of light. It didn't sparkle. It held steady. That ring had once been a promise broken before it could be kept. Now, it was something else. A memory, a vow not to forget. A quiet proof that truth could be scarred, but not erased. She turned to go back inside when she heard Grace's voice calling a question from the reading room. Grace was different now, her voice louder, her mind still fogged in parts but clearer in others. Some days she helped with tutoring, others she just sat and watched. That was enough. Outside, someone started music on a beat-up speaker, not loud, just enough to fill the space between the hammer strikes and children's shouts. Logan straightened up, looked across the yard toward Maya. She didn't wave, but she didn't look away. And he didn't move. Because some moments don't need closing. They just need to be lived, again and again, in the place that was never meant to be left behind. The ring stayed on her finger, not as a symbol of promise broken, but of a story that refused to be buried. In the stillness between engine noise and children's laughter, something unspoken passed between them. Not regret, not redemption, just presence. Maybe that's what healing really looks like. Less like a triumph, more like returning to the same place and choosing differently. The road ahead didn't promise ease, but it was open now. And some silences, finally, had names.